Our subject today is one of the most unique people of all time, and he just happened to be a jazz musician. I'm talking about John Burks Gillespie. Well, we're going to call him Diz or Dizzy because, well, you know how some people just hate their nickname, like Fathead or Pluky or Pee-wee's, names that people just give you? Well, Dizzy loved his. He was born in the country, Cheraw, South Carolina, on October 21st, 1917 to be exact. And he was the last of 9 children. And these two things are really what shaped his life. First of all, if you're the last of 9, that means you better be very quick at the dinner table. So Diz became quick in his musical thinking as well. Second, country people are honest and hardworking. They have integrity. Dizzy's father had to work night and day to make sure that they were poor instead of homeless. In fact, he had 2 jobs. He was a bricklayer and, of greater importance to little Diz, a pianist in a jazz band and a dance band on the weekends. See, 2 separate bands. They play jazz sometimes, and sometimes they play for a dance. Now, Dizzy's father loved music, and music was important to their family life. And one thing about being poor is most of the people you know are poor too. So the musicians that Dizzy's father played with, well, they were poor. Sometimes they would have to bring their instruments to a pawn shop and get some money for it. And when they got enough money, they would buy the instrument back. This situation forced Dizzy's father to always make sure that he kept the piano, the guitar, a set of drums, the mandolin, and also a big red 1-string bass fiddle in their living room. Dizzy had the opportunity to play around with all of these instruments. He felt like he was in a playground of instruments. Eventually, little Diz went to elementary school. He had to leave that playground. The highlight of his day was singing the national anthem and also singing the black national anthem, Lift Every Voice and Sing. In Cheraw, as in many places at that time, everything was black and white, talking about people's skins. The water was black and white, churches were black and white, so the anthem had to be black and white. A little something like what it is today, except now we only have schools that are black and white. Back then, singing was the first thing you did at school in the morning. So you might figure that everything went downhill for the rest of the day. But Lil Diz was so good at the alphabet and at counting that he was moved up 2 grades. Now, you know how usually the smart people in school are kind of reserved or nerdy and untouchable. And even if they aren't that way, you want to think that they are so that you don't feel too bad about those terrible, sad grades you're making. Well, Dizzy was smart and he was a hell raiser. Man, he was always getting into some kind of trouble at school and fighting too. He was small, so he had something to prove. You got to remember, they skipped him 2 grades. Diz cut up so much in class that his teachers threatened to throw him in the wood-burning stove in the middle of the classroom. But deep down, they loved him because he was so smart and he was always full of fun. He was a real show-off who always brought excitement to the proceedings. He stayed that way his entire life. When Dizzy was 12 years old, 2 important things happened. First, he saw Duke Ellington in a movie, and Duke was well-dressed and presented himself elegantly. Diz loved Duke's style, and the music inspired him to become a better musician. Secondly, he had the chance to join the newly formed school band, but since he was so small, nobody took him seriously when they were handing out the instruments. He got the last one, and you know what it was, a trombone. Now, this was unfortunate, not just because of the trombone, but because Dizzy's arms were just too short to push the slide all the way out to hit those low notes. Some notes he just couldn't play. In the country, though, you make do with what you have. Well, one day, Diz heard his neighbor, Brother Harrington, practicing the trumpet. Now, that's actually the man's first name, Brother. Oh, Diz was amazed. He went over to Brother's house and begged him, "Please save me from being a trombone player. Show me how to play the noble trumpet." And Brother said, "Well, son, we have a secret club, and you have to learn this scale to join." Brother showed him how to play the B-flat scale. Now, this is what Lil Diz probably sounded like playing it. Brother Harrington noticed that Diz was a natural. He played by ear. He could just imitate whatever he heard. Now, when you play by ear, you don't just play the notes. You play all the inflections, all the little bends and scrapes and scoops. Diz could hear and play all of that. Diz rummaged around the country somewhere in a barn. We don't know where he went, but he found an old battered cornet to play. And the cornet is just a smaller version of the trumpet, not quite as proud, but with the same intent. Diz didn't care about anything else but music. Instead of books, he carried his horn under his arm to school every day. His teacher, Miss Alice Wilson, said that by some miracle, he still got all of his work done. Now, I told you he was quick, but I really can't figure out how he did that. When Miss Wilson realized how quickly Diz learned music, she taught him all kinds of popular songs. She taught him how to learn music on his own, and she even encouraged him to make up his own variations. Now, most teachers would tell you, play it straight. It's easy for them to give you a grade, and it's just much less fuss. But she actually said, jazz this music up, make it sound like you. And this was his first lesson in jazz improvisation. Well, it'd take us a long time to talk about it, but it's much easier for us to demonstrate. We're going to play a little Old MacDonald in the style of Dizzy's elementary school band. Now we're going to jazz it up. We're going to improvise. In a very short time, Dizzy was good enough to play at school dances, and these were his first paying jobs. At the age of 13, he became known as the best trumpet player in Cheraw, a dubious distinction because he and Brother Harrington were probably the only trumpet players in the whole city. He could also play that trombone for you in case you had less money to pay. And if you were totally broke, he would play that big one-string red bass fiddle for free. Dizzy just loved jazz music. He listened to radio broadcasts from New York City's Savoy Ballroom. Especially he loved the trumpeter Roy Eldridge, who played in a band led by tenor saxophonist Teddy Hill. Diz patterned his early playing on Roy Eldridge's. We have Mr. John Faddis here with us today to demonstrate Mr. Eldridge's style at that time. This is a song entitled After You've Gone. Now you can see how somebody playing with that type of heat and fire coming through the little speaker of a radio could have inspired some kid in the country with raggedy clothes on, trying to keep from starving because he was slow at the dinner table, how that could inspire that same kid to learn how to practice the trumpet and play. In 1935, when Diz was 18, the Gillespies moved to Philadelphia and Diz got his first real trumpet. But the thing was, he couldn't afford a case. So he started carrying his trumpet in a paper bag. Musicians thought he was crazy. He earned the nickname Dizzy in that year from fellow band members. He had his country twang, he was from the South, and he was carrying his horn around in a bag. They would say things like, "Boy, here comes that dizzy kid from South Carolina. He sure is a trip." It might have started as an insult, but the name stuck, and Diz loved it. He really began to develop his own personal style. And this is really what Miss Wilson was teaching him a long time ago. He was learning how to make everything he played sound like him. That's one of the main things that great jazz musicians strive for. 2 notes, 3 notes, everybody knows. Oh, that must be Dizzy Gillespie. That must be Lester Young. As a matter of fact, the great tenor saxophonist Lester Young once said, "You have to play your own song if you want to join the throng." Yes, Dizzy made up new things, things that had never been played on the trumpet, faster things with more difficult rhythms and complex harmonies and things that just sounded like the way skyscrapers look. Let's check out this famous break on A Night in Tunisia. As a matter of fact, let me just sing it. 1, 2, 3, Let me tell you, it's hard to keep your place in the time. Now, I'm going to demonstrate how playing faster affects your relationship to the beat. First, I'm going to sing quarter notes in the break. Now you try it. Now I'm going to get a little faster and sing eighth notes. What about you? Now, much more difficult, 16th notes. Now let's hear you sing the same thing. Now that gave you a healthy respect for the rhythms that Dizzy played, let's listen to A Night in Tunisia.